a slaughter in San Francisco, all you can eat crow in Denver, and the Patriots put out to pasture. All that and more because it's time for Sunday Night Blitz. I'm Jason Fitz. More importantly, he's Frank Schwab. You guys follow him all over Yahoo Sports and NFL and betting content, and you're with us every single Sunday night for the same thing. Sunday Night Blitz. We get to hang out and we get to break down every single game. We're going to get to all of them. But here's the thing, Frank, we're just going to peel behind the curtain right away. I'm sitting here texting you, and I'm thinking, wow, I cannot wait to talk about the Sunday Night Football game. All week, we've been talking about the Sunday Night Football game. Now, it turns out we don't get to talk about the Sunday Night Football game. We instead get to talk about the Sunday Night Slaughter, because what the 49ers did to the Cowboys on the same weekend, by the way, where Texas loses the Red River rivalry game, there's a whole state right now that's in their fields that needs to be cuddled. They need to be held. Like, there's some real serious tears happening right now because the Cowboys got shellacked by San Francisco.
They need your donuts, man, and they need probably double size of them. I thought the 49ers were going to win this game, right? I think a lot of us did. I didn't expect them to win it like this. This is, whoa, what do we got with the 49ers here? Are we looking at like a historic team? That's how good they were tonight. The one criticism of them with this 4-0 start was, well, they haven't played anybody. They did have the weakest schedule in the NFL coming in. Well, Dallas is a Super Bowl contender. I don't care what happened tonight. They're still a Super Bowl contender. The only problem with saying they're a Super Bowl contender is at some point they'd have to go through San Francisco, and they can't. We might be down to like, how many teams could beat San Francisco? How many teams can we call a Super Bowl contender? Because the Cowboys can't beat them. I just watched that game. They could play that game 10 times. The Cowboys ain't beating them. So what we saw at the 49ers tonight was just, it went from, yeah, the 49ers are the best team of football to, oh my goodness, the 49ers are by far the best team of football. And how long can they keep this winning streak going? I mean, they've almost gone a full calendar year without losing a regular season game. The last time they lost a regular season game, October 23rd of last year, it was like 3 days after Christian McCaffrey got traded. He barely played in that game. Since the second game is when McCaffrey was up to speed, they haven't lost a regular season game since then. I get it. They lost to the Eagles in the playoffs. The Eagles are 5-0-2. But when you look at the Eagles, you look at the 49ers, the two undefeated teams left, they're not the same. The Eagles aren't playing on the 49ers level right now. The 49ers are on a different level than everybody else.
Well, and like, look, all these things can be true at once. They can be incredibly talented. They can be incredibly well coached. And Brock Purdy can deserve all the flowers. Like I've been saying for a week now, like it's like Voltron, you know, the robot together makes them impressive. But as I was watching it tonight, I kept thinking about what we do every single time we talk about Brock Purdy, the way we talk about him right now, being Mr. Irrelevant, right, retelling the same stories. What we're doing is we're really minimizing the greatness of what he's accomplishing right now. Like this is, at this point, he's sort of the Kurt Warner of this generation, right? Like, I don't care if he was a like grocery boy, he is who he is now. And who he is now, like, the guy doesn't make the wrong read. The guy doesn't make the wrong throw. The ball's always accurate. The number of throws tonight that were thread just past the fingertips of somebody, you look at it and say, impeccable decision-making, impeccable accuracy. Like, I don't care who he's throwing to. At some point, he deserves some of the credit in what he's accomplishing.
No doubt. And, you know, I mean, when he hits open receivers, we all just want to credit Shanahan or the playmakers, right? Like, oh, Debo got open, or, oh, Kyle called up this play. It is also Brock Purdy recognizing where the hole is in the defense, recognizing when George Kittle's going to be open, hitting him on time. Look, there's a lot of skills that go with being a quarterback, right? And we like to focus on how tall is he? How big of an arm does he have? How far can he throw it downfield? The ability to process, read a defense, throw it accurately. Give me those skills over a dude who can throw a ball through a brick wall, but can't read that defense. Doesn't know the anticipation of when to throw a pass. Brock Purdy is excellent in these areas of the game. And look, you can go back over the summer. I said a lot of things about Brock Purdy that I like to take back, right? I was like, be skeptical of this guy. It's like 5 stars. Yeah, he looked good, but whatever. Let's see, elbow surgery. He needs to come back and do this again. I have completely done a 180, and I think now Brock Purdy's underrated. And it's weird for me to say that because I'm not a quarterback wins guy. I'm not, oh, he's 10-0. No, he's not 10-0. The 49ers are 10-0. Quarterbacks don't have an individual record. But when I watch this kid play, he's just excellent at so many parts of the game. And yeah, of course, he's got a great coach, got great players to play with. That's fine. A lot of really, really good quarterbacks have great talent around them. Brock Purdy's maximizing it. This Cowboys defense is really good. I think they're a top 3 to 5 defense in the NFL. He put up 4 touchdowns and a 144.4 passer rating tonight. At some point, yeah, you have to stop with the, oh, he's just a product of the system and realize whatever it is, I don't care. The results are the results. And Brock Purdy has been, he's going to start to get MVP buzz. I don't know if I agree with that yet, but he's having a heck of a year. And he's a big reason the 49ers are 5-0 right now.
He's also unshakable. Like there's this moment of wherever Parsons is coming at you, you would think that there'd be some nervousness about it. And it just never felt like there's a calm to everything he does and the way he delivers it. There's just a confidence to it. There's a decisiveness to it. There's a control to it. There's an ability to stand in the pocket and not see, like, you never see happy feet. You don't see him moving where he doesn't need to move. You don't see him anticipating pressure where there isn't. Like the famous, I'm seeing ghosts out there. Like if he's seeing ghosts, they're all Casper. Like they're all friendly because ain't nothing slowing him down. And I'm looking at this and I'm to your point, when you start talking about who this 49ers team is, well, you've got Brock Purdy playing right now flat out at an elite level. Absolutely. You've got Christian McCaffrey playing at flat out an elite level. You've got Ayuk playing at flat out an elite level. You've got Bosa playing at flat out an elite level. Like you just look across the board. Trent Williams playing at flat out an elite level. Like you just
Fred Warner. Like it just goes on and on and on. Like this team is loaded, man. They're really good.
And that's what makes this so incredible for the 49ers right now. It's that they've got it all. They're loaded with talent. The coaching staff is loaded. Everybody's hot right now. They've got momentum. Like this 49ers team looks virtually like nobody's unbeatable. They look as close to unbeatable as you can look right now. I mean, there isn't a fatal flaw with them that you say, this is how you beat the 49ers. Like it doesn't exist.
You said it before. Where's the weakness? Show me the weakness. There's not one. There's just not. What about Dallas? Where are you at on Dallas? Because I kind of look at this game like, okay, what we found out about Dallas is very, very good football team that's just not on the same level as the San Francisco 49ers. And that's kind of what we thought about them, right? We were like, I mean, we kind of maybe talked ourselves in, maybe this Dallas team win a Super Bowl, but they're kind of just back where I thought they were. They're a good 12-win team that's not going to win a Super Bowl. And I'm sorry, Dallas fans, but if you got to go through this 49ers team again, you ain't going to win. Probably not going to beat the Eagles, but you're going to have a pretty good season, right? Like, is that where you're at too?
But I'm frustrated by that because think about, they showed a great graphic tonight on NBC during the game, and they talked about the 3 teams that use the most motion in the NFL pre-snap. Number 1 was Miami. Number 2 was San Francisco. Number 3 was Kansas City. Those 3 teams, what do they have in common? They know how to get weapons open, right? Like they know how to get their best players open. I watched CeeDee Lamb, who, Fantasy Football Live, we do our snake draft. I picked CeeDee Lamb, so I had a vested interest in CeeDee Lamb having at least a decent game. I watched CeeDee Lamb being a relevant part of this game plan. And I'm looking around at some point and saying, hey, it's not just about calling the plays. In the modern NFL, it's about disguising what you're calling at some level. So what I'm seeing right now is a Cowboys team that's pretty good. Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're good enough to win a bunch of games. But is that what Jerry wants? Is that what's going to keep McCarthy around? Is that what going to calm everybody down around Dak? Are they making the most of the talent that they have? Like, I just feel like the Cowboys right now, we always talk about being stuck in mediocrity. What do you do if you're stuck in upper middle class? Like, man, you're rich,
it's a weird
but you ain't
place to
rich.
be. Yeah, it's a weird place to be because, well, you're not blowing up the Cowboys and starting over. You're probably going to go 12-5 this year. That's probably what you do. That's a very, very good season in the NFL. You're probably also finishing second in your division and going to be out in the first or second round of the playoffs. So what do you do? Where do you go from there? It's a rare thing because usually teams in that stratosphere, you feel like this is a Super Bowl contender. I don't feel that way about the Cowboys right now. Not after that game. Like, sure, everything could break, right? You could get on a run in January, all that kind of stuff. But I come out of this game saying, yeah, the Cowboys are exactly what I thought they were in August. A very good team that's not going to win a Super Bowl.
It's always alarming. I'll use a real life analogy here. Saturday, I'm watching college football with a bunch of buddies. And many of the buddies that I'm with, I haven't seen in a long time. Many very successful people in their own industry that have all done really well. Everybody does well. It's one of those things where you're like, you're having that drink and you're like raising a glass and saying, kudos to all of us. We should success. We've worked really hard. Let's celebrate success. And so then the conversation came up of like, oh, we should go to Vegas for a weekend. So we're all trying to figure out how we could coordinate flights. And one buddy at the party just looks over and says, I'll just get my jet And that's when, like that guy lives different. Like he lives when he's like, I'll just get my jet. You're like, okay, you're a by the way. Like that's the first, like the Cowboys are everybody else at the party. Like, hey man, we're doing well. Things are good. And then the 49ers over here, they're like,
the private jet guy.
I'll just get my jet. Like, and then you realize when the jet guy's there, you're like, man, I got so much more work to do because like things might be going well, but they ain't going private jet well. Like that's where the Cowboys and the 49ers are. I can tell you this though, the absolute opposite of this, like, and I don't get joy, even though I smile when I say this, Frank. I don't get joy out of saying this, but the opposite of the 49ers right now, the team that seems to be in the most shambles in the entire NFL to me, with the least identity, with the worst quarterback situation because they're stuck and they don't have a quarterback at this point, with the talentless roster across the board, is the Patriots. The Patriots, like, let me say this clearly. The New England Patriots suck. And there's like just no nice way to put this anymore. And like, it doesn't matter that Belichick has had tremendous success. That's awesome. We talk about this every week. So cool that you've had all this success and you are arguably the single greatest coach in any sport of all time. I can say all of that and then still say, but guess what? Your team this year, right now, today, your team sucks. And they just got absolutely destroyed by a Saints team that I think is still in that pretty good. Like the Saints and Cowboys are kind of, I don't even think the Saints are as good as the Cowboys. And they made the Patriots look silly. That to me is shocking.
It was because, and this is part of it too, that every time the Patriots used to lose a game like they did last week, it was always the next week they're going to take it out on somebody. And we're going to spend all week saying, oh, Belichick's done. The Patriots are the dynasty's over, back when they had a dynasty. And then they come out and just take it out on somebody. We're on to Cincinnati. They blast Cincinnati. They be on to a winning streak. So I kind of, in the back of my mind, thought the Patriots are going to bounce back. They're going to come back. They're going to beat the heck out of the Saints. We're going to be like, oh, build it again, whatever. And then like Mac throws the pick six right away. And they're down 21-0, like basically right off the bus. And it's like, oh, this is just, the Patriots stink. They're a bad football team. They've gone from, I used to like to say the past couple of years that they were just kind of the most boring team in the NFL. They were just good enough to be kind of in playoff contention, but kind of not. And now they're just bad. Like this, I mean, the worst loss of Bill Belichick's career happened 7 days ago. Second worst loss happened today. Like, it's not going well there. And you're right. We've talked about this for weeks now. Patriots don't have players. They don't have any talent on that team. The roster is bad. Like you said, they got no quarterback. They're gonna have to start over. Like Mac just ain't it. Like you've come to the conclusion now. I don't think you can go into next season with Mac Jones as your starting quarterback. So that's part of it. Another part of it is, what does Robert Kraft do with Bill Belichick? He has kind of hinted that, hey, nobody's above being fired. Well, this is kind of a fireable season, right? Like, I know your next coach ain't going to be as good as Bill Belichick, obviously, but do you need to make a change? There's so many things the Patriots have to have a come to Jesus moment, look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? Where are we going? How do we fix this? Is it with Bill? Is it who's our quarterback? That's how bad these past couple of weeks have been for them.
I mean, they lose 34-0. 34.
It was awful. It was terrible. They look like the worst team of football.
Nothing. Like, and when you start talking 34-0 to Derek Carr, who basically had one arm for a majority of this game, Alvin Kamara was good, but not spectacular. There wasn't there wasn't this big breakout. Oh my God, you got, De'Von Achane, right? Like that wasn't this. This wasn't like Tyreek Hill went off on you. Like you got beat 34-0 because your offense just was absolutely inept. You got beat 34-0 because you didn't have an answer that could slow down the limited, and I say with respect, the limited number of weapons New Orleans has compared to, I don't know, a Dallas or a San Francisco. And they made today New Orleans look like an NFC powerhouse, and they are not, right?
No,
and that has to be reflective. Like, Mac Jones is not good, but they also, like, Ramondre Stevenson is not good. Like, they don't have a running back. They don't have a receiver. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a great line. Like, it's all screwed. The entire thing for New England right now is just burning down in flames.
Yeah, and you go back, compare them to the 49ers. We listed, however, a dozen guys who are legit blue chip guys. The Patriots have none. Matthew Judon. I think Matthew Judon's a blue chip guy. Didn't play today. Whatever. Yeah. I wrote this in Winners and Losers, basically saying, who's the second best player on the Patriots? And whatever your answer is, it's a kind of answer where you say, really? He's the second best guy in an NFL roster? The 49ers got 15 players. Their top 15 players are probably better than the Patriots best players. Like, I mean, like if you're combining the two rosters, the top 15 guys would all be 49ers players, except maybe Matt Judon slips in there somewhere. It's stunning. And I don't know. Usually I like to say, like, people talk about, oh, you set your franchise back a decade with this. No, it's the NFL. You can rebuild in 2 years if you hit a couple draft classes, a couple free agents here and there. This really kind of does feel like this might take 3-4 years for the Patriots, just because Bill Belichick keeps them kind of competitive the past couple of years, not this year. And now you look at that roster and you're like, the cupboard is absolutely bare. Where do we start? There's not a lot of young talent. There's not a lot of building blocks, foundation guys. This is a serious multi-year project the Patriots are going to be taking on here.
And to your point there, one thing Bill said after the game, he said that, they're going to have to do a complete restart. And when they tried to drill down on that, and the reporter asked a follow up of what does that mean? His answer was, we're going to restart. What does that mean? And we talk so much about, does Robert Kraft need to decide what to do here? The other question is that if you're looking at this and saying this is 3, 4, 5 year rebuild, is that something Bill wants?
Right.
Like,
that's exactly it.
Like, is Bill looking around saying, I'm out?
I just wonder if Bill doesn't. I thought always he'd leave with Brady. But then I thought, okay, it kind of makes sense. He doesn't want to be like, I'm just leaving you guys. No, Brady's gone. I'm gone too. He doesn't want to pull a Sean Payton. But now it's like, does Bill want to leave the franchise in shambles like this? And also, does he have a choice? Does Robert Kraft have to go to him and say, Bill, we've had 25 of the most magical seasons ever, but it's just done. Like, we got to go into, I don't know. These are really, really tough decisions. This could be a fascinating offseason in New England.
And remember, you'd be asking him, presumably if he stays, to work for a GM. That probably wouldn't work.
No.
If you made him some sort of honorary president of football operations, let's acknowledge that he doesn't have the greatest track record in hiring great coaches. So I don't know what skill other than coaching he brings to all of this. So it's a dumpster fire. It's a flat out dumpster fire in New England, and it is awful. Less awful, but also still hard to figure out, are the Buffalo Bills. Now, they go to London to take on Jacksonville. I think it's important to note that I believe it's a massive advantage for the Jags to have been there for an extra week. And anybody that spent any time in Europe, I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time in my career in Europe on tour. I don't think you realize how much it takes out of you with the weird time change, all of these things. So I will acquiesce that some things, Thursday night football, are always going to look funny. Some things, quick trips to London, are always going to look funny. But getting beat 25-20 by the Jags, to me, was absolutely inexcusable for a Buffalo team that a week ago looked like they were just going to be unstoppable. And now we're sitting here saying, well, I don't know. Like, what did you make of that?
Right. And the Bills have had these moments the past few years where you're like, you lost to Jacksonville a couple of years ago. Urban Meyer was there of all people, where you're like, what was that? Where did that come from, Bills? And now you look at their season has been kind of a terrible week one, a game they probably shouldn't have lost. Josh Allen kind of loses his mind, 4 turnovers. Then they have 3 just incredible weeks in a row where they're just blasting people, including a really good Dolphins team. And then week 5, they come out with this. Like, their offense didn't show up until the second half. Their defense was bad. They lost Matt Milano, which is a really, really big deal. They're all pro linebacker. That's a bad injury. Yeah, a couple more injuries on defense too. But you come out of this, you say, look, the Bills want to win a Super Bowl. It stinks to have this as your bar for the season. Not every team has this bar. Every team says, oh, Super Bowl or bust every year. No. There's some teams that would be happy with a 10-win season, right? For the Buffalo Bills, if they don't at least make a Super Bowl this year, the season's a failure because their window's closing. And right now they're 3-2. And it's going to be hard in the AFC to get that number 1 seed with a couple losses already. You almost have to start running the table or else you're not going to catch the Chiefs or whoever. So, or the Dolphins of that matter. Now you're behind the Dolphins in the division. It's a really interesting spot for the Bills. I don't know what to make of their inconsistency. This was a bad game for them. I don't think they're a bad team. It was a bad game. It was a bad loss. Straight up. I don't care about London and the advantages. I agree with you on all that. But you still got to beat the Jaguars if you're going to be the team you want to be.
Well, and two glaring things stood out here. Let's just admit this. If I told you yesterday that Stephon Diggs would have 8 catches for 121 yards and Gabe Davis would go 6 for 100, you would think that this was absolutely a runaway win. The problem here is Josh Allen was your leading rusher with 4 carries for 14 yards. I mean, that you've mentioned this before. At some point, the Bills have to run the damn football. And that is absolutely, for James Cook to finish with 5 carries for -4 yards. Their longest rush, not by a quarterback for the day, was a whopping 6 yards. So they couldn't run the football at all. And then conversely, the Bills defense, which is supposed to be something that you can sort of tip your cap to and say, hey, this is a calling card, got carved up. Calvin Ridley goes off 7 for 122. ETN 26 carries, 136 yards, averaged 5.2. Like this was one of those weird moments where I've been saying for weeks, the Jags, nothing looks easy. Today, offensively, a lot of it looked easy. Yeah. And that happened against the Bills. Like I can't make that make sense.
I can't either. And again, the Milano injury is something we gotta watch. He's a big deal to that defense. I mean, he does it all. He's a playmaker. He's done for the year with a leg fracture and a knee injury. That could be a bad injury for them. They get Von Miller back, and then they take a step back with the Milano loss. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Bills right now. I think I do in my heart think they're a good team, but you can't keep losing games like this. You just can't. You're gonna feel this when the seeding comes out in January.
By the killer point by you that we need to just acknowledge that when only one team gets it by, like all of these games right now will matter, and especially in the AFC where at some point it's going to be, I would think, is three-headed monster between Miami, Buffalo, and Kansas City. So every one of these games
matter. You don't want to go to Arrowhead. You don't want to go to Cincinnati or where it probably won't be Cincinnati this year, but you don't want to go to Miami. Like you want to be at home. If you could just get the number one seed and your first playoff game is in Buffalo, and if you win that, you're in the AFC Championship game, and that's in Buffalo, when it's going to be snowing and 10 degrees, those fans are crazy. It's a massive advantage, and the Bills just can't get over that hump to get there.
Did this change any of your thoughts about Jacksonville, though? Because, in fairness, hasn't looked good, but now they're 3-2.
Yeah, right. They're 3-2, win in hand over the Bills, if that matters for head-to-head. I mean, that's kind of a narrow runway to land on right now. But Trevor Lawrence, as he's kind of had this up and down season, but at the end of the day, after 5 weeks, you look and you say, you know what, on the whole, it's been pretty good. If his receivers didn't drop these passes and blah, 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 they could be a team that could get on a roll. I mean, we saw the Colts in that division lose Anthony Richardson today. I don't know. He might be back soon, but he's got a problem staying healthy. The Tennessee Titans are no good. Houston's whatever. The Jacksonville could still run away with this division. As you know, we talked about a few weeks ago that I was high on. They're going to win this division by 3-4 games. That actually looks like it's still a play for them. The London thing is just huge for them. They have really played that well. I'll give it. Look, nobody wants to do it. The Jacksonville Jaguars, because Sean Payton probably wants to move the team there someday, has taken it on and said, we'll do London every single year. And it's become a massive advantage for them, especially this game. I thought this was a London game. And I had a buddy in my ear say, no, take the Jaguars and the points. This London thing is huge. They're staying there. But I was like, come on, look at how the Bills have played the last few weeks. Well, it turns out that London thing is a big deal for the Jaguars.
Hey, every extra edge matters, which is something we also learned in one of the worst games that was also one of the best games of the day. The Jets and Broncos. Let's be honest, this game was just painful to watch. Most of this game was absolutely ugly, but Sean Payton takes the L not only on the field, but also in social media. The Jets almost immediately put out a tweet that was spectacular on this. Yeah. Hackett gets the game ball. Like this had a vendetta. Like, I understand all the drama we love, but can we just acknowledge, by the way, that both the Jets and the Broncos looked terrible in this football game?
Oh, yeah, they did. They did. I mean, Breece Hall looked good. I mean, that's a big deal for the Jets. You know, I mean, Fitz, you remember Jimmy Johnson, obviously. We grew up in that era. And the Jimmy Johnson, if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. Well, Sean Payton, you didn't walk the walk. You talked a lot. You talked about how terrible Nathaniel Hackett was. Hey, that's your right. You could do that. Nathaniel Hackett had a better record through 5 games last year than you do right now. You're 1-4. You're leading one of the worst teams in football, a team that's actually somehow worse than last year, it seems. Their defense is awful, like legitimately awful. And offensively, they went 5 straight possessions to start the second half without getting a first down. Like, what are we doing here? The Broncos, like, I'm based in Colorado. The Broncos have been absolutely awful for 8 straight seasons now. They have not made the playoffs since Peyton Manning was still playing. Peyton Manning's already been in the Hall of Fame a couple of years, all right? Like, it's been a long time, and there's no signs of life for them. There's just none. Everything is bad. Sean Payton came here to fix everything. I'm coming in, I'm going to tell Jared Bell of USA Today everything that's going to be right and everything the other staff got wrong. You got a terrible football team that might be the worst of football right now. Not the Bears got off the schneid. It's all bad for the Broncos, and it's all bad for Sean Payton. Like, again, you come in here with this, hey, I'm coming in, I'm the man, I'm going to trash everybody else. Well, you better walk the walk, and they sure aren't now.
The interesting thing to me is the other side of this also. Like, the Jets look terrible. I don't care that they won this football game. They don't look good. But then there's this weird thing happening with Zach Wilson where because he last year handled everything with such bravado and this year seems to be handling things the way most quarterbacks would, now it almost feels like he's beloved. It feels like there's this whole section of the world that's suddenly rooting for Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it. I'm like, look, none of this is like, we're in a spot where they're applauding mediocrity on the broadcast the whole time just because it's not getting screwed up. They're finding little reasons to praise Zach Wilson's play right now. And I just have to say, like, the standard is the standard. We always hear coaches say that. The standard is not being met by the Jets. I don't care if they won that or not. Across the board, they don't look good.
Last Sunday night, I really was like, is this Chris Collinsworth or Zach Wilson's dad talking to me? Like Chris was over the top. Like every single completion, it was like, oh my God, Zach Wilson is the next Terry Bradshaw. Like, let's calm down a little bit. Like these are passes NFL quarterbacks need to make. He played 2 good quarters. He went back to being bad again. And this is just the way the Jets are going to play football this year. It's going to be tough to watch every single one of their games. Their defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. The one shining light from this game is maybe Breece Hall, who's awesome. Like he is really, really good, looked healthy today, took over this game in many ways. Maybe Breece Hall is their path out. Maybe we can have a competent offense because we have this stud running back and we're just going to ride him the rest of the season. It's at least possible, but you got to do that against a defense better than the 2023 Broncos, who are one of the worst defenses I've seen in a really long time.
Okay, so those are the biggest games of note. But what we do on this show every single Sunday is we go through every single game. Let's get to some of the rest of the action across the league. And I want to start with a game that I had very low expectations for, but I found myself hate watching the whole time. Hating myself when I hate watch. Like I'm watching this thinking this isn't good football, but I have to watch it. Houston, Atlanta was interesting to me because at some point, you knew Atlanta was going to have to rely on Desmond Ridder. They did. They get a close win. This one came down to the wire. Game-winning field goal as time expires, 21-19. But what's interesting to me is that, yet again, we continue to see this rise of C.J. Stroud. Even in a loss, it just feels like C.J. Stroud is playing so well. Now he holds the record for most passes to start a career without an interception, most yards in the first 5, all of these different records. Like, C.J. Stroud is legit, and he gave Atlanta everything they could handle in this game.
He's really impressive. Really, really impressive. They knocked it out of the park with that pick, didn't they? Like, look, anything can happen. It's 5 games. Things could change. But I'd be pretty shocked if by the end of the year we're not sitting here saying C.J. Stroud looks like a star in the making. Like, he really does look good. I'm just confused by what to make of Desmond Ridder now. A week ago, we were like, Taylor Heineke. He's got to play. He's got to start. Ridder was good in this game, 329 yards against the Texans defense. It's not that bad. Like, yeah, they've been feisty. They gave Trevor Lawrence problems a couple weeks ago. So and obviously they blasted the Steelers last week, and Desmond Ridder kind of picked them apart. And I'll be honest, when Dalton Schultz scored with about minute 50 to go or whatever to give them the lead, I thought game's over. Desmond Ridder ain't going to drive them down. And lo and behold, Desmond Ridder just click, 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 click all the way downfield. Koo kicks a game-winning field goal. The Falcons win. Where are you at with Desmond Ridder right now? I mean, does this game change anything for you? Your opinion on him and whether he could be the guy kind of lift the ceiling of the Falcons a little bit?
You know what it does? It makes me angry at the Falcons offense because I still don't think we know. And to your point, 28 of 37 for 329. Awesome. Kyle Pitts, 7 catches. Drake London, 6 catches.
Finally, right.
We saw a real offense from Desmond. We saw trust in Desmond Ridder in this offense. Now, I mean, all that trust put up 21 points down to the wire. Like, let's not get it twisted. Atlanta had 7 points in the fourth quarter total, right? Like, and this game got more interesting at the end. I think what this is, and this is what I think a lot of the NFL is right now, mediocrity, trying to figure out how mediocre the mediocrity they're playing against is. Like, there's a complicated way to say it, but like, these are 2 okay teams going at it, and Desmond Ridder looked good. I need to see it for a couple of weeks, and then I'll start to buy it. But what I hope is that this at least opens Arthur Smith's mind to, hey, we could expand and do more things offensively than just try and get it to our 2 running backs.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to be like, no, don't throw to Mac Hollins this play. Let's get Drake London a couple catches. And maybe Jonnu Smith could just be a bit player and get that Kyle Pitts guy the ball a little bit more. Because he said, wow, shocker that you throw the ball to these guys 20 times, 20 combined targets, and your offense looks the best it has in a long time, 329 yards passing. Crazy. Get your best players the ball and good things happen.
Now, we've obviously broken down already the Jags. Now we have the Texans. So let's stick in the South for a second. Take a look at Tennessee and Indianapolis. a game I was actually really interested in because I'm not sure what we know about the Titans yet. Wildly up and down. To your point earlier, they don't look like a very good football team. What was amazing to me was watching Moss just go off running the football right after Jonathan Taylor gets paid. Like, we know he got that big old bag of cash, and then somebody else is running all over the Titans. And I guess to me, Frank, that was surprising because we may differ at times about where the Titans are going to be, but that difference has really been on the offensive line. The Titans defensively didn't look like they were ready for this at all. And I watched Moss go off and I watched Gardner Minshew go off, and I'm looking at the Colts and I'm like, this only continues to sort of cement my thought that the Colts are actually going to be a pretty good football team this year.
Yeah, they're feisty. They're hard to play against. And to your point, like, the one thing the Titans really do well that I'd never go take away from them is they have a good run defense, or they had at least. I mean, until this week when Zach Moss, I think he had 165 in this one, and he just looked good. I know they're not paying Jonathan Taylor to kind of be a partial timeshare type of guy, but if you get Moss and Taylor both 15 quality carries a game and you become one of those really, really good running teams like the Ravens have been the past couple of years, you have the running quarterback for it as long as he can stay healthy. It's pretty impressive. This Colts team it's good. Like they're still the bones on this roster of a team that was pretty good a couple of years ago. Last year was supposed to be good and they didn't end up being good, but it's not bare. The roster is actually okay. I think Michael Pittman's a good player. All this Quentin Nelson, he looks like he's bouncing back a little bit. So I'm intrigued to see where it goes. But the one thing we have to talk about is Anthony Richardson. He's played 5 games and has been knocked out of 3 of them. And this one happened early on. He had a shoulder injury that looked awful. Turns out sprained AC joint. We'll see how serious it is. I mean, Derek Carr played right away through his. I don't know how serious Anthony Richardson's is to see if he misses time. The good and the bad is you have this awesome backup at Gardner Minshew. The bad is you're having to see him every week. Like you'd rather Richardson stay healthy. I hope this kid can start to learn to protect himself. Part of his game has got to be running the ball. You're not the same player if you're not a dual threat, but yet he's getting hurt all the time. He's trying to be a dual threat. So I'm really worried about, can this kid just get through a few games and not get hurt? Like I want to see him. He's awesome. He's electric. But overall, the Colts winning despite losing their quarterback in the first half, really, really impressive.
And look, I'm going to die on the hill that Gardner Minshew deserved a shot to start somewhere this year. There aren't that many capable quarterbacks. And also going to die on the hill repeatedly that Gardner Minshew should have been acquired by the Jets before the season even started. Would have been a perfect backup to Aaron Rodgers. They could have gotten themselves out of this Zach Wilson situation. Having said that, there is a long-term repercussion, not just with the injuries for Anthony Richardson, but for what it means for his development. Like, however much time he misses, the most important thing this year is just, what's he look like as he throws the ball more, as he develops more as a quarterback in this league? And so for me, I'm wildly concerned that these are reps that he's missing. These are game experience moments that he's missing. These are opportunities to take risk throwing the football that he's missing. Kudos to the Colts for finding a way to win without him. But yeah, at some point you have to be concerned when it's week after week after week. And you're talking about a quarterback that plays a very physical style of play. He's going to have to adjust. Steichen's going to have to adjust the play calling. They're going to have to teach him to be a little bit more careful with his body. And then they're going to have to find a way to keep him on the field to get those reps. Because without it, he's going to be the same next year. It's going to be that, hey, we just need him to play more football.
And you just worry that, I mean, I hope he never gets hurt again, but you just worry about, like, are the Colts going to go to him and be like, don't run as much? Well, then he's not the same player. That you talk about development. This is part of his development. And I don't know. I just worry that if he keeps getting hurt, the Colts are going to have to be like, okay, let's turn you into a pocket passer. But he's not a pocket passer. That's not why they drafted him 5th overall. So I'm interested to see where it goes. I just want the kid to stay healthy because he is so much fun to watch. He had a pass today. I can't remember. I think it was a Josh Downs downfield, and it was just like breathtaking. It's like, my goodness, this guy has a cannon of an arm, and he's 245, and he runs like the wind. But you got to stay on the field. Availability to best availability, all that kind of stuff. That's where I'm at with Anthony Richardson.
Speaking of development, there was at least an expectation from some people that the Giants would continue to develop this year. They've developed into a turd in a punch bowl. Like, there's just no nice way to say it, Frank, at this point.
Terrible.
Like, I mean, what Miami did to the Giants today wasn't just Miami coming out and getting the stink of the Bills loss out. It was also Miami reminding you, this is what a more athletic, better football team looks like. This is what a team that is in control looks like. it was painful to watch the Giants not be able to get anything going in a butt kicking. It was 31-16 was the final score, but the game never felt that close. It felt like this could have been 45-3 at one point.
No, I mean, I know this is a very specific thing, but I wonder how many teams in NFL history have had a 100+ yard pick six and still not covered a double-digit spread. I mean, it is hard to lose by 15 points when you have a 102-yard interception return for a touchdown like the Giants had. But they just got blasted in this game. I mean, they give up 9.7 yards per play. Like, you're going to have a first down every time the Dolphins snap the ball, basically. And I just keep wondering about Brian Daboll. He was coach of the year. He's great. Well, I wrote this at Winners and Losers. Giants fans once thought Ben McAdoo was a pretty good coach. Like, after his first year, 11-5, and everybody's like, ooh, McAdoo. And then he comes out in his second season was such a disaster. And obviously wheels completely fell off there. I'm not saying I hope this for Brian Daboll, but I'm also wondering, is he on the Matt Nagy path? I've talked about this. Is he coach of the year because he took over a bad situation? They did pretty good and they won a lot of close games, and now they're being exposed. It just is so ugly. The lack of competitiveness from the Giants the last couple of games has been startling. I mean, just like, what are you doing out there? It doesn't look like they care to tackle anybody or cover anybody. They don't have any playmakers. Daniel Jones gets hurt in this game, and goodness knows, even no matter what you think about Daniel Jones, the thought of the Giants playing without Daniel Jones for a few weeks is scary bad. Like that might be worse than football bad. And I think they get the Bills next. Angry Bills team coming back from London. So the Giants, just the wheels are off. This is one of the worst teams of football. And this is the challenge for Brian Daboll the rest of the season is keep this thing together. Keep competitive. More competitive than they've been the past few weeks, because it's been absolutely miserable this season.
Predictably, without Saquon, they couldn't run the football. That right. was the death of this thing. But I think something you said about last year, they won a lot of close games. It feels like last year, because they exceeded expectations, and they were never really as good as their record was. Like, I get everybody says you are what your record says. I'm not buying that.
That's just I hate that. Right, I hate that. So right. I hate
it. They weren't as good as their record. And so what happened is, I think the Giant fan base and a lot of people that maybe didn't watch a ton of the Giants last year became in love with this concept that the Giants were about to take some next step. When I think what we actually saw last year was better to be lucky than good. So now this year they've regressed back to the mean, and it's like, okay, this is a lot more. If we had seen this version of the Giants last year, nobody would have been surprised. It would have been very clear. Hey, you're moving on from Daniel Jones. You figure out Saquon. Daboll will get it fixed. It won't be a big deal. Instead, because we saw the acceleration of the time, the plan, because they were so good last year, I think people just came in with unrealistic expectations. The Giants suck. And early on in the season, there are a handful of teams that are 1-4, and there isn't a fraud in them. Like, the 1-4 teams are deservedly 1-4. They aren't good. It's just, and I feel for Giants fans, but if I'm Miami, I got right away. I regained my explosiveness right away. I've continue this hot De'Von Achane thing that
he's good.
It's fun to watch. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Every time he touches the ball, it's like, stop what you're doing to watch, because he could break a 70-yarder. Like, he's that fast. He is. It's amazing how simple kind of the Miami Dolphins plan is of just, we're going to be the fastest team in football. Period. End of story. But okay, why did anybody else think of that? I mean, it just, man, but Achane, this thing is going somewhere with him. I mean, he is really, really good.
Yeah, and another team out there that is relying on speed to just kick everybody's ass are the Lions. And it's funny, I was talking to a buddy today because he's not a big NFL fan, and he laughed at me when I was like, "Hey, you should watch the Lions. Like, you want to see really fun offense? Watch the Lions. They're playing it right now." And he laughed, and I was like, "No, I'm not kidding. I think there's a whole casual group out there that just is expecting the Lions to not be a great football team, when in fact the Lions right now look spectacular. Like, today, based on just what we saw today, if you had to ask me who the second best team today in the NFC is behind the 49ers, I can buy the Lions being competitive with the Eagles. I can buy it. I mean, that offense fires on every cylinder. They can do anything.
Yeah, I mean, Goff threw for 3 touchdowns today, and they didn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jamar Gibbs. Okay, that was impressive to me, because coming into this game, I'm like, being a better I am. I'm like, the Panthers haven't covered a spread. They're not going 0-16 and 0-17 against the spread this year. They're going to cover a spread. It's plus 10. And the Lions have all these injuries. I'm like, man, this is kind of a spot where maybe the Panthers will be feisty. No, Lions turned out their lights pretty quick. I mean, this game was really never in doubt. It was 14-zip off the jump. Bryce Young throws a terrible interception to Aiden Hutchinson and is kind of off to the races after that. I'll say this one thing about Goff. Like, when he was traded, he was a throw-in. We got to balance the salaries, whatever. Goff's going to play a mediocre season. We're going to draft somebody, right? Like, that had to be the plan. No matter what the Lions are going to say today, there was never a plan where they were like, you know what, Jared Goff's maybe like a top 10 quarterback, and he's running an offense that's, like you said, really, really fun to watch. Jared Goff's become an asset for them. He's really good. Like, I know it's kind of hard to wrap our heads around, but he's legit. Like, he's very, very good. And I'm going to write about this, spoiler alert, for power rankings this week. But the more we go on, and I've kind of touched upon this, the Carolina Panthers kind of screwed up trading up for Bryce Young. And not because of Bryce Young necessarily, but when you think about what they could have had, like, if you just would have waited, if you just would have been like, we're going to be we'll just re-sign Baker, whatever we're going to do. We're going to re-sign Darnold. We're just going to have some stopgap this year. The Carolina Panthers would have DJ Moore, the pick that became Jalen Carter. What if they draft Jalen Carter? And they'd be the inside track for Caleb Williams. You cannot tell me Bryce Young is more valuable than Caleb Williams, Jalen Carter, or DJ Moore. You just can't do it. So their impatience here has led them to a guy who looks like the third best quarterback in this draft class. And you're just like, oh my God. You talk about, I said, don't say anything sets you back a decade. Being impatient, trading the world to go get Bryce Young might set you back a decade. I mean, I hope Bryce Young works out, because otherwise, oh my goodness, the Panthers are going to just have so many regrets.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep going back to coaching also on this. Like, I'm looking for some beautiful creativity that makes the best of the quarterback skills. I'm looking for that. And I don't see any of that with Frank Reich's offense. I just don't. And, and when you talk about the Lions, really the only way the Lions I thought were going to lose this football game was if they had a letdown. And I just think we have to acquiesce that Dan Campbell's personality is never going to be the kind that allows for a letdown. Like, my guy's like, on a scale of 1 to 100, he's 100 all the time. That guy, you don't you burn out maybe someday. You get tired of listening to him maybe someday. But in the season, I just can't imagine that they come out flat with his personality as a coach. I think the conversation of, are the Lions the best team in their division? We've already squarely answered that. They should and will win their division. The conversation to me now is, can they go to the Super Bowl? And I think there's still a gap between where the Lions are and where the 49ers are. But man, every week I watch it, I keep thinking, earlier I said that Brock is like this generation's Kurt Warner. I feel like in some ways, Goff is this generation's Alex Smith. Like, Alex Smith was a high draft pick and just wasn't good enough. Then he goes to Kansas City and he becomes, not that he was bad with San Francisco, but at Kansas City, he became a really good playoff caliber quarterback. And he did a lot of good things for them there. So I think that's where Goff is. Like, he's capable of leading this team with these weapons, shorthanded in that sort of a win. Man, offense is fun to watch when he's running it. I'll give him his flowers. I won't give flowers to the Ravens, who I had high expectations for this season, as you know, and Lamar, who I had high expectations for in running Todd Monken's offense. And every week I feel like I say to you, I'm like, well, you know what? It's just taking a little time. It's just taking a little time. No. This was the Steelers are bad. I don't want to mince words on that. The Steelers are not good. And the Steelers go in and beat Baltimore in a game that Baltimore had under control for the majority of it. And then all of a sudden it just slipped through their fingers while Kenny Pickett goes off at the end of the game. Like, how does George Pickens get wide open for a huge touchdown that ends up sealing this whole game with Kenny Pickett throwing it against that defense, with that coach, with that offense being as inept as it was?
I mean, Kenny Pickett made one play, really, the whole game. But, this is what happens when you let a team hang around. And the Ravens, look, Steelers defense is awesome. Like, they really are good. I don't know what happened in Houston, but the other games this season, they've been great. TJ Watt, Highsmith, they're really good up front. And they kept this game close. But at the same time, the Ravens have to put them away. And they couldn't. And, to the Lamar point, like, they're down there at the 5-yard line. I think it was about the 5. And Lamar, with about 2.5 minutes left, just throws this terrible interception into the end zone. I haven't looked back to see what happened, but it just seemed like you just threw it right to the corner. Like, what did you see there? What are you trying to do there? He comes back, throws his helmet like something else, bad play call or a bad route or something. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and look at it. But it's all on the quarterback. Throws a bad interception. comes back the next drive, turns it over, and that's a game. And look, Lamar Jackson's getting a lot of money now. You got to be the guy. You can't be throwing that interception. You can't be turning it over. I still love this Ravens team. I think they're really, really good. But like I talked about with the Bills, okay, well, this is a bad loss. Like, you can't lose games like this to a Steelers team that legitimately, it felt like, I mean, at the point they got the punt block for the safety, it was like, well, that's great, but the offense, you could play for 10 more quarters and the offense isn't going to score. They did get the one play they needed, but it was an ugly game for the Steelers, but it come out with a win, and the Ravens had to be like, how on earth did we lose that?
And now we're in this weird spot where the entire division is separated by one game, 3-2 and 2-3. Yeah. Everybody's in this because Cincinnati went in and suddenly Joe Burrow looked like he didn't have any calf issue. And I mean, a couple of the scrambles that Joe Burrow had in that game against Arizona were significant to me because I'm watching it and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I feel like maybe that's the theme of this Sunday. The amount of times I'm sitting there saying, this doesn't make any sense. The Bengals get the 34-20 win, but Joe Burrow, 317 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jamar Chase was a gift from the gods. If you had Jamar Chase in your fantasy football league, congratulations. 15 catches, 192 yards. I mean, the game plan was obviously drop back, throw to Jamar, and holy hell, it worked.
That should be the game plan. Like, hey, Arthur Smith, this is how easy it could be. Find a guy with number 1 on his jersey, throw it to Jamar Chase 1 billion times. Like, that's, again, I've talked about this with Mike McDaniel. One of the things I love about Mike McDaniel is he has no problem saying, I got Tyreek Hill, you don't. I'm going to throw him the ball until like he can't even stand anymore. He's just going to get the ball as many times as I can give it to him. And that was the Bengals today. No T. Higgins. They're just like, Jamar Chase is going to lead us to victory, and he sure did. They're finally explosive plays. I think it was a 62-yarder that Chase hit that kind of really separated them and started to put the game away. It was good to see that for the Bengals. All last week, looking at that Titans game, I was like, the Bengals can't fix this. This is really, really bad. Kudos for them for fixing it a little bit better protection. Burrow looked a little bit better, explosive plays. And to your point, this Bengals start was kind of a disaster at 1-3. They looked awful. And it came out of first place. Like, okay, you start the season again. The Bengals had to come out of Arizona saying, we're fine. We're back. We look good. Burrow felt good. Nobody's buried us in the division. The Ravens had a bad loss they shouldn't have had. We're right back in this thing. We're good to go.
The only thing I would say, cautionary tale to Bengals fans. Now you have the Seahawks, then you're at the 49ers, then the Bills, then the Texans, Ravens. So the next 5 games, you've got some difficult ones up ahead of you. I'm with you. I can't watch that and not immediately fall back in love with Joe Burrow and the Bengals and think, all is right with the world, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also a part of me where I'm like, I don't know. I'm nervous about it. It's all about the eye test, which is the same thing I would say about the Eagles. Hear me out, Philly fans, before you get my mentions and tell me how much you hate me. Like, I get, like, undefeated is fine. It doesn't look, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's starting to look better, but I don't look at Philly the same way I look at San Francisco because it just doesn't look the same when we're watching it.
I'm glad you made that point because if you're being honest and you're not a Philly fan or even a 49ers fan, if you're just me or you, don't care, whatever, we're unbiased on this, and we can look at Team A as the 49ers, Team B as the Eagles. You're like, yeah, they got the same record, but they're not the same team. They are not. Like, I think the Eagles are going to be fine. I really do. I don't really worry about them. They're winning games while they figure this stuff out. They still have a great offensive line. They still have these receivers who are awesome. Dallas Goedert got involved again today. But yeah, you're right. It's like every game is kind of like, this was a lot closer than it should have been, Philly. What are we doing here? There was a time, it looked until really late in the first half when the Philly put together that drive. I thought that was a turning point. But until then, it was like, Rams are live. Cooper Kupp was back, and it looked like he had never left. Puka was still catching a lot of passes, making plays. And it was like, Rams are going to do this. I thought the Rams were going to upset them today. That didn't happen. Credit to Philly. They got the job done. But you're right. If you're being honest with yourself as the Philadelphia Eagles or a fan of the Eagles, you have to be saying, we got to play a lot better if we're going to compete with the 49ers. They're on a different level right now. They can get there, but
it's the same cautionary tale I feel like we were telling the Vikings last year. Like, not as drastically, but the Vikings were just weirdly winning over and over and over again. And you're like, hey, guys, They're not that great. And I'm not saying Philly isn't that. Like, we've seen proof of concept. We know Philly can get great. It's just, I think last year we saw, I always say this to you, but I feel like last year we saw pixie dust all over it. Like, last year there was the perfect amount of frosting on the cupcake known as the Eagles. This year, like, it's a cupcake and it's really good and it's frosted, but it's not perfectly frosted. And like San Francisco over here, like the cupcakes just look a little better. I am hungry. Like now in the middle of the night, now
you have a donut withdrawal. It wasn't Raiders game day. You must be like, yeah, you must be struggling, man. All right. You need some sugar fix. We need to you need to get some cake or something so we can finish out the show. It's like, you can be all right.
Monday night, like tomorrow is like, when do I start eating the donuts? I hate Monday Night Football. We'll get into why I hate Monday Night Football in a minute. But there's one game from Sunday we haven't gone through yet. And it is what I would say is the most confusing game of the whole day for me. Because I watched Kansas City yet again, not really look great, but find a way to win. And I watched Minnesota yet again be competitive in a game and find a way to lose. And I remember years ago, a buddy of mine that's a coach said, he's like, you want to know the truth? The simplest terms. Good teams find a way to win. Bad teams find a way to lose. And I know that's oversimplification, but this game felt like that to me. Like, I'm watching Kansas City. I'm like, of course you won this ugly football game. And I'm watching Kirk Cousins take a sack on a play, like on a Hail Mary. You got one thing you got to get rid of the ball. And he just folds and flops down. And I'm like, what in the heck? You didn't even give him a chance. What are they doing? I don't understand this game at all.
I've been one of these guys that's defended Kirk Cousins a lot through the years. He's better than people give him credit for, flat out, like he is. But I also recognize this is the quintessential Kirk Cousins game. It is, he played well, put up numbers, and they find a way to lose. Like they can't get over this hump with them. He's going to be a free agent next spring, and he's going to get paid by somebody. Somebody's going to need a quarterback. Talking themselves into Kirk Cousins, 36 years old. Fine. That's great. I don't think that team's going to be the Vikings. So they're 1-4. They're the 1-4 team that I could see being good by the end of the year. All four of their losses have been by 7 or less. They're a pretty good team. It's just regression has hit them way, way too hard after going 11-0 in close games last year, 0-4 this year. But you're still probably not making the playoffs after a 1-4 start. The odds are really, really against you. So you start to think about, like, this is probably the end of the Kirk Cousins era this year. And it's just going to be, how is he remembered? He's going to be remembered as a guy, put up good numbers, and he's kind of become this likable figure from the Netflix show and all that. But they're just not. There's something there with the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk Cousins where they're never getting over the hump. And today was a perfect example of that, where you look at this game and you're like, a good team, a good quarterback, I guess, finds a way to win. Like you just talked about. Good teams, good quarterbacks find a way to win that game. And they just couldn't. And now they're 1-4, and they're probably could write them off.
They're 1-4. They still have to play the 49ers. They still have to play the Saints, who look like they're pretty good. They still have to play the Bengals, who by then may be right. And they still have to play their entire division. They haven't played a single game yet in division. So they've got 2 games left against the Lions. They've got 2 games left against the Bears. That'll be easier for them. And 2 games left against the Packers, who are better than everybody expects. So I look at what's ahead of Minnesota, and it just feels real easy for this team to get to the worst spot in the NFL, a spot that I know well as a fan, 7-10, right? 6-11. Like, you're going to get there, and then you're going to have to figure out what to do with the entire thing. But I think you're right. I think we're watching the end of this era, and then they're going to have to make a decision at some point how to get bad enough to get one of the guys that they really want out of this draft. Because if it's not Kirk Cousins, you better have. I'm with you. I think Kirk has taken a bad rap at a lot of times. But I would always say this, like, Kirk might be vanilla ice cream, but sometimes you don't turn in vanilla ice cream until you know what the other flavor is that they're offering you. Again, with the sweets analogy. And for all you know, you're like, I don't want this vanilla ice cream. And all of a sudden somebody turns around and says, oh, thank you for the vanilla ice cream. Instead, I'm going to give you barf ice cream. And then you're like, well, that didn't work out in my favor. Like, you don't know if you're going to get barf ice cream, Frank.
Yeah, it is. I didn't expect to be talking about barf ice cream tonight. I ain't gonna lie to you there, Fitz. But it's almost like one of those things with Minnesota where they know their next quarterback probably isn't going to be as good as Kirk Cousins, but they can't keep being on this hamster wheel. Like, it's just, it ain't gonna happen. It's not working. Like, this is just not what you wanted, even though he has not been the biggest culprit in all this. But again, you do, like, I hear all the Kirk Cousins critics, like, And I do agree. A great quarterback, he probably finds a way to win this game today, and Kirk just couldn't. And now the Viking season is, unless they just got it on a tear. I mean, you think about it. I mean, if they go 8-4 the rest of the way, that only puts you at 9-8. Like, you gotta be one of the best teams of football the rest of the way just to get in the playoffs. And I don't see that happening for the Vikings.
Which just soaked in for me that's going to be the exact thing you'll be able to say about my beloved Raiders on Tuesday morning if they don't win. Monday Night Football, Green Bay going to come in. They're going to take over Vegas because every existing fan base does. Everybody, that's all they're going to talk about tomorrow night on the broadcast is how many Packers fans there are. Yep. And I would just remind Packers fans or everybody that if you had the choice between spending your Monday night in Green Bay or Vegas, you'd probably want to go to Vegas too. No shade. I'm just saying the Packers go into Vegas to take on my beloved Raiders. I feel like, especially because we don't have to do a show after that game, I feel like the liquor consumption will start at a solid noon and the donuts will start at 2:00. But I'm going to tell you, Frank, I hate Monday Night Football. I'm the one guy in the world I don't like it when my favorite team's on Monday Night Football because I didn't get to share in any of the joy this weekend. Everybody else had joy or sorrow. I didn't get to share in any of that emotion.
Then you just stressed all day. You just stressed all day. I'm
a stressy. Yeah.
I get it. Well, how are you feeling about this game? Like, do you think, obviously they got a shot, they're favored. Like, what are you feeling? How you feel Raiders could win this one?
I actually think, I think, look, if you look at this season so far and the way it's gone for the Raiders, they have a win against a bad Broncos team and a blowout to the Bills. So let's just take that out. The other couple of games have been right down to the wire. This is the way the NFL goes this year. It's going to be a close football game. I do believe that in the fourth quarter, they started to get a little bit of the rhythm running the football last week against the Chargers that they haven't had, and you can run against this Packers defense. I think they'll be fine there. There are certain truths that I know every week. Jordan Love is going to carve up that secondary because they're playing back, and it's a really safe defense. So Jordan Love is going to put up big numbers. I believe that. Aaron Jones will be good in this game, but I feel like this is the sort of game where Jimmy G comes back. The Raiders try and slow the whole game down because that's what they want to do. They try and limit possessions because that's what they want to do. They try and run the football, which I think they'll be able to do. Josh Jacobs has another big game on the heels of last week's game. That's enough to push them through in an ugly football. I don't think either of these teams are necessarily great right now, but I think the Raiders can win an ugly game.
I could see that. This is a fork in the road game for the Packers. Are you good or not? Like, you're 2-2. You'd probably deserve to be 2-2. They just got housed by the Lions. And that you got to take a step back after that and say, whoa, are Packers bad? Are the Packers going to be? Well, I think we're going to find out tomorrow night. Like, if you could rebound, if you could beat a bad Raiders team, then you're probably on a path where you're going to be a pretty decent team, whatever. But if you go to Vegas, you can't beat the Raiders, well, then you're not going anywhere. You're just not going to be a very good team. You're going to be mediocre at best, whatever. So I think this is a huge statement game for the Packers, as weird as that sounds, just because I want to know, are you good or not? Because if you come out of this 2-3, you're not good. Like, it's just, all right, the week one, you just beat a bad Bears team and you came back on the Saints, and that was awesome. But then you start looking at them a different way. So I think the Packers get it done. I'm not as confident as I was a couple weeks ago with the Bills, Dolphins. But I think the Packers get it done, knowing full well that if the Packers lose this game, their season's going nowhere. Yeah,
I think you're right. And by the way, as you mentioned, they get the win over a bad Bears team. They have a 1-point loss to a bad Falcons team. They have a 1-point comeback win over a mediocre Saints team, and then they got housed by the Lions. So what does that tell you? Like, you're kind of like, what do you make of that? Like, are you any good or not? No, you're probably just a 2-2 mediocre team, and I don't know who you are yet. And that's where there are a whole bunch of teams in the NFL that are just mired in mediocrity. I keep saying that are all just sort of clumped together, and they're all sitting on the bus waiting for their opportunity to go hang out with the cool kids, and none of them are there yet. I think the Raiders and the Packers are both in that section. I think the Raiders, frankly, if their offensive line can play even partially better than they have, the Raiders have a chance of being a mediocre football team instead of a bad one. So this game is really where what'll be interesting is the intensity for both sides, because I do believe for both sides, it is a defining game. Like, if you're the Packers, you have to beat the Raiders. And if you are the Raiders, you have to beat the Packers, especially
you just
knowing that the Raiders.
1-4.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be it, right? Like, then Mark Davis will just start paying attention to the Vegas Aces trying to win the WNBA championship, and we'll all wait for Josh McDaniels to get fired. That's the inevitability that happens from that. You know what? I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it, Frank. The Raiders going to win. Why? Because I need the Raiders to win. I need something nice. Right? That's what I need. My betting and fantasy didn't go well this weekend, so I need my beloved Raiders to do well for me. Charles McDonald, by the way, you never want to miss him. He's back with us Tuesday with the exempt list. I'm back on Wednesdays with Charles Robinson and Jory Epstein for inside coverage. You can follow us on Twitter at Yahoo Schwab to get with Frank. I'm at Jason Fitz. And of course, Stone, our producer extraordinaire, doing God's work behind the glass at SJ Rochelle. Give him a follow also so you can hang out with us. Check out the Yahoo Sports app too. We got a ton of awesome content out there that you can check out. Articles, Frank's always writing. He's working hard. And I'm just sitting here making fun content around college football and the NFL. We're always out there with you. Be sure you check out the app and leave us a 5-star review, I should say. Rate, subscribe, tell your friends, your family, enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. We will be back next Sunday. Frank, you know what? We're going to be back next Sunday, and the Raiders are going to be on a 2-game winning streak, and I'm going to be out of control. I don't know if you're ready for that, buddy, but that's what's going to be next Sunday.
I'll prepare myself all week, Fitz. I'll get ready. I'll get ready for your energy. Perfect. If they're 2-3 or if they're 1-4, you're bringing the energy either way. I know that.
Yeah. It is a sad energy is different than happy energy. Thanks for hanging out with us, y'all. We appreciate you. Have a great week.